Welcome to Ministries Podcast. This month's theme is our connections. This month, I always think about, obviously, the notable. We just went through Valentine's Day, but also our connections in all different, layers of our community, our families, and etc. And they can play a big part when it comes to our overall how we outlook and maybe even overall wellness. But before I begin, I wanted to recognize World Cancer Day. That was February 4th, 2025. Just some notable things I want to share, some statistics that I want to share with those who are listening. 10 million people die from cancer each year. That's more than HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. I also want to mention that World Cancer Day was founded by International Cancer Control, and their motivation, I think, is their efforts are really to, on a global scale, to reduce the cancer burden, promote equity, and ensure that cancer control remains a priority on the global health and development agenda. Today, I have a returning guest. His name is Terry Tucker. So, thank you so much for coming on, just being part of the conversation.
Well, Robert, thanks for having me on again. I always enjoy another trip around the sun and being able to come back and spend time with you. So thank you for that.
No problem. I want to just mention a small disclaimer. If you are in the United States, 988 is the crisis hotline. But wherever you are in the world, even if you're not doing so well, I encourage you to find your community, find the people you feel safe enough to ask the question, I need help. Find those people that you can kind of lean on. It's not easy, but it's something I want to encourage those who are listening, especially when we may not feel like there's any other options out there. It's sometimes the biggest, bravest thing for us to do is to ask for help. Again, thank you, Terry, for coming on. I know people, and I'm actually going to use an African proverb to start us off. I think it goes well to a lot of times. Especially nowadays, we try to do things so quickly. African proverb says, if you want to go quickly, go low. If you want to go far, go together. What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
Actually, what comes to mind is a psychology professor at the University of Chicago who does this experiment with his students. And the idea is you go out and you get on a bus, and in 3 questions, you're deep with somebody. So you get on a bus, you sit down next to somebody, hey, how you doing? That's question 1. Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Question 2, and I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a doctor. Okay. Question 3, have you always wanted to be a doctor? And no matter what the person says, now you're into their why in life. If they say, no, I grew up on a farm, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or, yeah, my mom was a doctor and she died of breast cancer when she was 40, and I decided to honor her memory by following in her footsteps. Whatever they say, now you're deep with somebody. And we don't get anywhere in life in a vacuum. Nobody is a success without all those people that have supported them and gotten them to where they are. And I think anybody who you and I would say are successful would agree with that. And I know I agree with that. The success I've had in life has certainly been by the effort I put in, but also by the coaches that have helped me when I was playing basketball, or the doctors and nurses that have helped me through this cancer journey. So we go places with people. We don't go places by ourselves.
I totally agree. And when I was thinking each year, and I do mention a little bit on the element of our connections around this time, because I do find it's polarizing for those who are maybe alone right now. And then what we just was it 2 days ago, Valentine's Day, a lot of emphasis on being that with that right individual. But what if you're not feeling right with yourself? Doesn't matter who you're with at that point. So it's emphasizing the self-care, but also there's this one person, it's quote, I remember I was reading on it when I was just getting prepared today, and I thought it was quite good, if I could find it. But the person in essence says, regarding how purpose plays a big part on how we see ourselves and how we feel in regards to feeling lonely. There's a Gallup poll. Now, these statistics is just for context. It says 44 million Americans, 70% of the total population are experiencing significant loneliness. And, loneliness is something that we kind of see, but, when we think about our connections and how we communicate and how we can, I think, like what you said, I don't live in a vacuum. One of the most, I guess, my best advice I was given, and it's kind of like going deeper, is when I was doing well in certain aspect of my job, my supervisor was kind of like tearing up, and she said, "Robert, no matter what you do, just keep going. Don't look at what anyone else is doing. Just keep going." And it was probably one of those. It's simple. The simplicity was there, but also it's kind of goes with Martin Luther King saying, "If you're gonna be the sweeper, be the best sweeper you could be. Whatever you do it with excellence." And I think that doesn't cover the scope of us feeling disconnected, but I think it touches on some important details. Anyway, anything you want to share?
Sure, it absolutely does, and I think we all in life, we all have a purpose. I love and I'm going to mess up the quote a little bit, but it's by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor during World War II, and also a psychiatrist. He was a doctor, and he talks about how people should not look at their life in the abstract. That every one of us has a reason, a purpose, a why, a mission that we're supposed to accomplish on this earth. We all have unique gifts and talents. I mean, if you told me I was going to go out and spend the rest of my life being an accountant, one, I'd probably fail miserably, and two, I would be very unhappy because that's not my skill set. Find your skill set. You have a unique gift. You have a unique talent. And how can you use that in the world? How can you use that making people better? That, I've been on and we've talked over the years about my cancer journey. And don't get me wrong, when I go, and I'm still treated for cancer every 3 weeks, I always see people that kind of look like deer in headlights. They're scared, they're nervous, it's their first time being infused with the drug, they don't know what's going to happen. And I find a real simple way when I start feeling sorry for myself is to turn that outside, to turn it outwardly, to look at somebody and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then just be quiet. Maybe they'll just say, "I'm fine. How are you?" "Well, I'm good." And you start to develop a rapport, a relationship. And let me end with this story with that question. There was a nurse several years ago, excuse me, already a nurse, about 25 years old, so pretty young, but she was learning how to do things on the unit where I get treated. And about 6 months later, she was taking care of me by herself. And she came in and she said, "Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I don't know how to tell you." And Robert, I didn't know how to respond to that. It's like, what do you say to somebody like that? And so I said, "Well, I hope you decide you want to tell me because it sounds like it would be interesting." So finally, a couple hours later, she comes in, sits down, and she says, "All right, Terry, here's the story." She said, "When I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I had a very good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my family. I was going to get out of nursing and go to work for Amazon." And she said, "And then I met you. And I see how you react. I have a very violent reaction to the medications that I'm given." And she said, "And then I went back in your file and I read about everything you've been through, your amputations and the medications you've been on." And she said, "When I finished reading your story, I knew I was where I was supposed to be." Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had a positive impact on her. For everybody who's listening to us that feels kind of disconnected and out there and lonely, understand that your life matters, and there's probably somebody you don't even know that is watching how you handle your adversity and would give almost everything they have to walk just for 5 minutes in your shoes.
It is humbling, especially, been working in the mental health field almost 4 years now, and I just feel the more I know, the less I know. In regards to I connect well. I love what I do. I don't really feel any sense of it is hard, but it's almost like you reframe it. It's hard when was it ever not hard? It's kind of, how do you reframe that question? Like, well, the work is hard. Well, it is supposed to be hard, but who's going to do it? And I think sometimes when you reframe it, and like you mentioned that nurse, I can connect to that story, because it's something that cannot be explained. When you feel you're in the right place, wherever that is. What is success for you? It's not what everyone else says. It's what you say, what you feel at that moment, and that it's not static too. It's like, if I wanted to train for the marathon, it's gonna be a pain. It's gonna be hard. It's supposed to be expected to be hard. And when it comes to loneliness, if you had social barriers, if you were one who maybe distanced yourself and isolate, it's going to be hard to get comfortable. But, the goal is not to get comfortable, it's to connect. And I think when we value ourselves a little bit more, and it takes time, I think those little steps can get us there. I think when things are hard, the harder things are worth doing. It's not at the time, of course. Sometimes we're really struggling, we don't really like, but sometimes when you discipline yourself in the sense of just being a little patient before giving up, before just setting it down. Everyone had those moments, and then you remember, hey, if I just stay here a little bit longer, it may actually be better for me. I might actually thank myself later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we don't grow when we're comfortable. We grow, we get better, we find out about ourselves during that discomfort. And so if I'm comfortable, that bothers me. It's like, wait a minute, this is too comfortable. I gotta do something that sort of, shakes it up a little bit.
Yeah.
That makes me uncomfortable, because I'm not growing. I used to coach girls' high school basketball, and I would always tell my players, you need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because in that uncomfortableness comes growth, and makes us a better human being, and makes us question what's going on. Can I do more? Can I do better? Is there a reason that I'm here? And I always say, especially 13 years of dealing with cancer, everybody, and for me, it's cancer, whatever you're dealing with, find meaning or find the message in your misery, because there's a reason that you're going through this. Learn that reason, figure that reason out. And as you say, more than likely, you will find a way in growth from that misery, as opposed to, oh, this is bad and it's going to hurt me. It may hurt in the short run, but in the long run, if you take away the message and apply it in your life, it's amazing how much farther or how much more you can grow in your life.
I just want to share the quote I was trying to find. It was this one, Guillermo Maldonado. I apologize, Guillermo. He says, loneliness is not lack of company. Loneliness is lack of purpose. And I say, obviously, I could, when we focus on the negative talk, and I feel all of us have a degree of that, whatever that person is, and whether you're dealing with mental illness is yourself. And then one thing I want to side note about mental health, and a lot of times people talk about mental health, they're really talking about mental illnesses. They're really talking about, and then I'm of the notion that I really want people not to talk about mental illness, but more talk about mental health. Let's not talk about mental maintain. Let's talk about health. How can we get better? How can we do better? But in regards to this quote, I think it speaks on a very important part. Like you're saying, I think it's great to be comfortable with this discomfort. You may be exceptionally well aptitude. I've seen people in, whether when I did jiu-jitsu or whatever they did, they were exceptionally well. But this mindset of being comfortable with discomfort is hugely important for the mental fortitude later on, because you'll get older, you face injuries, whether you're continuing, it's how do you go that extra step? And sometimes it gets harder and harder as you continue to go. So I do feel that the intangible sometimes is the biggest battle, the one inside our minds, when it tells us you're not good enough, even though you have all the facts that you can do this, or it's just putting that into practice. I want to ask you a question as we kind of switch gears. What would you say to those who say they don't have enough time to connect? And maybe they're so busy with what they feel that everything's about success later. It's never about here and now. It's more about, okay, I just have to get to here, then I'll be happy. I'll be here, and then I'll start connecting with my family. I'll start connecting with those around me. What would you want to say to those people who say they don't have enough time to connect?
I'd say determine what you value in life and understand that, because I don't believe God puts us on this earth with our unique gifts and talents and then just whisks us away and says, nope, sorry, not doing that anymore. There's always time. There's time to do the purpose that you are put on this earth to do. And let me give you a definition of success that I heard when I was a little kid. I was a big fan of a basketball coach at UCLA by the name of John Wooden. And he was at the time probably the most successful, the greatest college basketball coach of all times. And this is how Coach Wooden defined success. He said, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you did the best to become the best that you're capable of becoming. Now, here's a guy who's he won 7 national championships in a row. But if you look at that definition of success, nowhere in there does he talk about winning. Nowhere in there does he talk about, numbers or number of trophies or how many championships or anything like that. It's peace of mind. Have you done the best to become the best you're capable of doing? Have you given it your all? And it doesn't matter whether you've won or lost. It matters whether you gave it your all. At the end of our lives, that's what we're going to be judged by. And we're also not going to be judged by what your neighbor had or what the person at your office had.
Yeah.
We tend to get off the path when we start focusing on I want what Bill has, or I want what Mary has. It's okay to want things in life. That's fine. But I mean, what is it? The 8th, 9th commandment about you shall not covet your neighbor's goods and stuff like that. That's exactly what that means. I don't want something because Bob has it. I want it because I have it. I want it. It's something I want, not something somebody else has. So don't worry about where Bob is or where Mary is. If they're successful, be happy for them. Say, great, I'm very happy for you. I am on my path. And I'll end with this. I think it's more important in life. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people that care about you. Find people that are willing to invest in you. Find people that want to see you succeed, and hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together. Because at the end of your life, what you're going to realize, life is not about getting to the top of the mountain. Life is about the journey that you have getting to the top of the mountain. So make that journey with people that care about you.
I totally agree. It's a lot of times I think about self-respect and what gets missed. And even though we have time, we kind of outsource it to the third party. We outsource, especially now with our, working in the mental health field. A lot of times the whole scrolling, I have to putting your phone down for an hour, being able to just be present with someone face to face. It's easy for even me, because I had my first cell phone when I was in the military at 18. I was in Air Force in 2000. So we are still discovering how much is impacting to be on the screen all the time, to be on the screen and just scrolling down. And the problem with that is I think it reinforces this highlight reel that is unrealistic, and then it's unachievable. You see other people on vacations all year round, and it can increase the negative self-talk in our minds. But I think self-respect is being able to say, no, I'm going to put that down. I'm going to invest on what I can control, what I can do today. And one thing I remember, and I think it's true, and if you're friends that are pastors, and if your home is not right, if you don't come home and you don't spend time with your family, ministry is dead. I'll just say that. You cannot and that's why I say even when in what I do, it's humbling because it's still learning the time management, knowing that I can only do so much, and understanding the story that you mentioned of the nurse who lost a friend. I've lost in my work. I've lost people who I work with, and I understand it's hard. It's hard to wrap your head around, even though there's nothing you could have done. It does see, it reminds me of what's really important. Like you're mentioning, it's not so much the accolades. It's a ride. It's a journey through it, and the people that you meet. The idea is, it's life is best spent working through problems with good company. And I'm paraphrasing. So it's being curious, staying curious, moving, and understanding that you're allowed to be curious. What is success to you is defined by you. It's not defined by anyone else, really, in that regards.
It is. And if I can just add to that, I mean, success is something that you're right, we have to define for ourselves. And worrying about what other people think about us. Social media allows us to do that. There was a study done at the University of Virginia a few years ago where these professors took students at the university and put them in a room. And they were not allowed to have anything with them. No devices, no pens, paper, anything. The only thing in the room was a table and a chair. And they were asked to stay in the room for 15 to 20 minutes. The only other thing in the room was a buzzer. And if you pressed the buzzer, you received an electric shock. So you actually hurt yourself. 67% of the men and 25% of the women shocked themselves during that 15 to 20 minute period. And what the conclusion of the study was is we're not comfortable in our own skin. We're not comfortable, as you've said, with our own thoughts in life. So a good way to deal with that is to take 5, 10, 15 minutes every day. And don't tell me you don't have, going back to time, you don't have 15 minutes that we all waste. Unplug, sit down in a quiet place. I'm not saying to pray or meditate. Let your mind go wherever it goes. Be comfortable with the thoughts in your mind. Because if you can do that, a lot of the external things that we all experience from social media and phones and television and all that kind of stuff, you can push that away because you're much more comfortable with the thoughts that you have. When you're always on your devices, you're not comfortable with the thoughts that are going through your mind.
Yeah, and it puts you in a difficult situation because you're constantly trying to find ways to distract yourself, and it can be, at least for me, I find, especially in the people I work with who I care, I do find that is more of a barrier. And it's not to say, it's one of the things, like people used to say money is the root of all evil. It's not, in the sense of money's needed. However, it's how we see money is the problem. How we go about achieving money is the problem. And I think the same thing with social media. There's some great things about social media. However, there's also some things that we can overuse it. We can use it as a crutch. We could distract ourselves. We could distract ourselves to the point that it becomes more of a negative impact, than its intended use. And I want to ask you, what has helped you stay connected with those around you? Obviously, we're talking, and we're going to shift gears after this, but what has helped you stay connected?
Yeah, I mean, my family has been very important to me. One of the jobs I used to have was I was a police officer. Not only was I a police officer, but I was a SWAT hostage negotiator. And those were some very high-level, scary, nerve-wracking kind of situations to be in. And a lot of times after those, people would be like, hey, come on, we're going to go out to the bar and have a few drinks before. And I was always like, look, I love you guys. I would lay down my life for you. But no, I'm going home. Because what grounded me in my life is what I call my 3 F's: faith, family, and friends, in that order. And so going home and spending time with my family was grounding for me. It let me shut out all the distractions, all the noise, everything that went on during that hostage negotiation, and just be with people that I loved and care about. So that, for me, really, the 3 F's are really what's gotten me through my entire life.
I have to piggyback on that. For me, even on some of the hardest days, I could tell I'm doing well. I would say maybe not in that day is when I get excited to go home. If you could get excited, it's not because there's some new, like we're gonna go to a restaurant. No, it's just to get home. It's and that's that takes commitment, that takes intentionality, takes connection, communication, working through problems, understanding that people make mistakes, understand you make mistakes, humble yourself, and then at the same time finding value. It's not about how good you are at it or how good the other your spouse is at it. Is that you're a partner. You guys are partners, and in that regard, you're going this journey together, which is a wonderful experience. It's like Naomi, Rachel. I kind of paraphrase, but perhaps the secret of living well is not having all the answers, but in pursuing unanswerable questions in good company. I find that we mentioned not just. I think staying curious, being creative. I love being creative. I know I could throw a rock and hit a million good singers. I know I can sing decent, but at the same time I love doing it, and it's not about anything, any achievement. It's about me cathartically coming from work or something that for me to kind of process my feelings. And for me, that I feel that's a beautiful thing. If we could be creative, something that kind of works differently when we try to think creatively or find that time for us, wherever that looks like. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And that was one thing as hostage negotiators we were taught, was to be curious, because a lot of times we would get on scene and have no idea why this person had taken a gun and barricaded themselves or whatever happened. So we had to figure that out. And one of the ways we did that, and I think these kind of go hand in hand, is what we used to call tactical empathy. I think you can get rid of the word tactical and just talk about empathy. Help me to understand where you're coming from. Again, the important word there is understand. If I was negotiating with somebody that was a homicide suspect, I wasn't going to say, oh, I totally agreed that you should have killed those people. No, but help me to understand, because understanding builds trust, and trust leads me to a point where hopefully I can get you out safely.
Yes. I feel it's a lot of times we may feel what we need to do is just share more of ourselves. Sometimes we have to share less of ourselves and just listen more to what's out. And when you get to that mode where there's no urgency, you're just there present, you can have a conversation and actually truly be curious of, oh, why did you do that? And understand that it's okay that you're around people. Maybe you don't agree exactly, but you don't have the context to even. So it's not a fighting point. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's just being there, understanding that people have their why they feel this way. But at the same time, we could be decent, kind people to each other. It doesn't mean that we have to, I rather say I'm kind to people than nice to people, because I feel when I think about niceness when I'm a kid, it's just I don't want to cause problems. But if you're in a friendship or a relationship, sometimes those problems need to arise. Sometimes they have to be talked through, not avoided. So kindness is not avoiding. Nice can sometimes promote the idea. I'm just going to be nice and not say why this is uncomfortable. I would say that's not the most healthy thing to do. Maybe it's about time you tell them why you're upset. Maybe it's about time you tell them why this hurts, as opposed to, oh, I just want to be nice so this doesn't make it difficult. And like we said in the beginning, communication, connection, any of these stuff will be difficult. Do you value the connection? Do you want to work on that connection to make it better? Thoughts in regards to that?
You're right. I mean, it is. Any good relationship requires work. And a lot of times people say, well, a marriage is 50-50. I never in my life have I been 50-50 with my wife. Either one of us is, she might be 70 and I might be 30, or I might be 80 and she might be 20. It's really kind of saying you are important enough to me, and I love people. If you think about it, Robert, at 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember probably you and I were here. people are going to be living in our houses, doing the same jobs we were doing, maybe even, 100 years, they're probably not going to be driving the same cars, but they're going to be doing the same things, going to the same churches and rec centers and theaters and things like that. And nobody's going to remember we were here. So understanding that, for me, it's about those connections that I can make now. It's about being curious and asking those questions. I used to do this. This used to drive my wife nuts. But she was in the financial services industry, and we would always go to the end of the year holiday party. And I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in here, and at the end of that, I'm going to come out. I'm going to find 5 of your coworkers, and I'm going to tell you, how they met their spouse, where they went to school, where they grew up, how many kids. I'm going to tell them everything. I'm going to tell you everything about them. But the interesting thing was, on Monday morning, they're going to come to you and they're going to tell you what a great guy I am. But they never asked me one single question about myself. They never reciprocated with those questions because we're narcissistic. You want to be a great conversationalist? You want people to love you? Just ask people about themselves. Exactly. Why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and things like that. And people will love you. And you don't have to say a word. So if you're uncomfortable in crowds or with one-on-one with people, just ask them questions about themselves. And people will absolutely, positively love you. That used to drive my wife crazy. But those connections for me, that was kind of a superficial way. I don't recommend doing that. But going deep with people, kind of like what we talked about at the beginning. Finding out why they do what they do. I feel especially my experience, working in the mental health field, it's a lot of times if someone will come in as an example, parents there with their 22-year-old or whatever, and they're like, he or she's not doing this, and like starts kind of nagging, and I say, you gotta leave. I talk to the client. I ask the client if it's okay for me to talk to the mom or dad, and if they say yes, and then I talk to them, and I'm like, well, you're right. He's not doing, or he or she's not doing any of that. But the last thing I want this client to feel is that he or she can never come back to talk to me. And then I go even further to say, and whatever you tried, the fact that you're talking to me, it hasn't worked. Okay, let's try to find some solutions that may be able to help. And a lot of times it's empowering. It's piggybacking what you're saying. It's when it comes to mental health, the person has to be involved in the plan, or it's not going to work. It may work for a month, a week, 3 weeks, but it has to be their idea because it's an intangible, invisible illness that gets focused on the illness part, that if the person's not part of it, the success rate's really small. A lot of times it's more about them being involved, those small victories. And I felt that that showed me a lot and humbled myself a lot, how much I didn't know on that factor, because you could go so far. But I always encourage, when I was in church leader and now as mental health, working in mental health, is always go deeper. Just keep going deeper wherever you are at. I want to give a moment, I know this has been great. Thank you, Terry. Sure. I want to give you a moment to kind of share anything you want to share, update, whatever you're comfortable with as we wrap things up. Sure. I mean, you and I have done this for a number of years now. And in 2012, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer and told I'd be dead in 2 years. And we're coming up on 13 years now that I am still here. And now my doctor has pushed my treatment schedule out from every 3 weeks to every 6 weeks. And that. So, I mean, things for me are looking up. Things for me are looking better. Let me end with this quote, and I love this, from Ernest Hemingway in a book called Farewell to Arms, which is a sort of semi-autobiographical novel that he wrote about his time as an ambulance driver for the Italian army during World War I. And there's a line in the book that I absolutely love, and it goes like this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. So understand that, things are going to happen to us in life. We're going to lose people that are close to us. We're unexpectedly going to get let go from our job. We're going to find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness. Life is going to break us. But if you can keep moving forward, if you can keep putting one foot in front of the other, there's a very good chance that at the end of that experience, you're going to emerge a stronger and more determined individual.
I found this quote. I think it was from some. I don't know. Maybe it's unknown. If someone knows who this came from, I thought it was beautifully said. It said, "The loneliest people are the kindest. The saddest people smile the brightest. The most damaged people are the wisest. All because they do not wish to see anyone else suffer the way they do." I feel a lot of people who really experience pain usually, and they're on that healing journey, they feel this in some way, shape, or form. There's something human and beautiful about the idea of being broken, but also having that second shot. The idea of the coming back story, it's kind of entwined to America, in its roots. We are the underdog. We always, I'm a sucker for helping the weaker and the ones who maybe not feeling that. And it's not that they're really weaker, that they don't feel there's any option. So I think that this is a nice way to finalize. I just want to, as your final thoughts, I know you mentioned the book from Ernest Hemingway. Any final thoughts you want to leave as we wrap things up, Terry?
Yeah, I would tell you this. I had a nurse ask me what it was like. I had my leg amputated in 2020, 2018, I had my foot amputated. And she asked me about the amputations. And I said, certainly they haven't been easy. But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And Robert, you know this, that's who we are. We are not bodies with a spirit. We're spirits with a body attached to it. So every day, spend a little more time working on who you really are, your heart, your mind, and your soul. We go to the gym, we eat right, we get enough rest to work on the body. Spend a little time every day working on who you are. Work on your heart, work on your mind, work on your soul. Because at the end of the day, we know this body's going to die, it's going to decay, it's going to go away. But what's going to live on for you, for all of us, is that heart, mind, and soul. Work on that every day.
Thank you, Tara. I'm just going to leave you with this thought I have. When final thoughts is from Rockefeller. He says, "Think of giving not as a duty, but as a privilege." Anyone who lost someone understands this. There's a finite amount of time. So I find, a lot of times when we're young, we're told, if you make a mess, then clean it up. If you make, but when you get as an adult, you learn, at least for me, I learned that being able to clean up my messes is a privilege. And sometimes we're not able to. Sometimes we have to watch it happen, unfold. Sometimes we're not able to because it's not our job to clean it. Sometimes it's someone else's, and it's harder to watch someone else struggle through this. So this is just to emphasize the importance of community and connecting. It's a privilege to help each other. Find out what success means for you. Don't make it about a bunch of things. Make it about something more deeper. Make it something that matters to you. Don't assume tomorrow's going to come. Just try to be present today. And in regards, not at the same time, I like to say, a lot of times, I guess the reason I think this month is so important is that I think all of us do want to connect. We just don't know how. I think a lot of times we try to distract ourselves, and we're just putting a bunch of band-aids to the wall that just needs a little bit more time to heal. So I encourage you to maybe start thinking that you can allow that wall to heal. Maybe it's okay to sit still for a little bit. Maybe it's okay to say no a little bit more. Yes, sometimes when you don't want to, it's uncomfortable. But I encourage that you be kinder. You move forward. You will make mistakes, like all of us do, but it's okay. And I just think that when we look at things in different perspectives, we may be more encouraged to be braver when it comes to living well, and whatever that looks like. So thanks again, Terry, for coming on. I just want to share with those who are listening to, check us out on the website, reviveministriesfl.com. Our YouTube is the link right here. Any question, if you want to be a guest, obviously info@reviveministriesfl.com. Again, thank you so much for coming on, Terry. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote from Desmond Tutu. He says, "Do your little bit of good where you are. It is those little bits of good put together that overwhelms the world."